through it. It'll be the end of the covenant that he enters into, which lasts for 7 years. And you're right. Knowing what the abomination of desolation is and when the abomination of desolation is the key to setting up the timeline. If you think that the abomination of desolation is when he goes in, the Antichrist goes into the temple and declares he's God, then you put it down here. Look at Daniel chapter 12. This is crucial to understanding how the end times work. If you don't get this, you're going to be in confusion. And we were in confusion about it. And we cried out, and the Lord showed us. Right? Shut up and seal to the end. Shut up the word and seal the book until the time of the end. Well, He's unsealing the books, and we're in the time of the end. But in Daniel chapter 12, he says, from the time that the continual burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. There's two ways to look at that. Only two ways. The offering taken away, the continual offering, right? He goes into the temple, right, and he cuts off the sacrifice. It says that in Daniel 11:31 and in Daniel 9:27. And he says it's in the midst of the week that he cuts off the sacrifice. You know, in 2 Thessalonians 2:4, right, the lawless one goes into the temple and declares he's God. Right? The continual burnt offering and the abomination of desolation set up. Okay? If it happens at the same time, that's called a conjunction. Right? In English, they're conjoined. Right? They're conjoined. But if from the continual and 1,290 days later, the abomination of desolation, okay, 1,290 days later, this would be a preposition. From the time the continual burnt offering is taken away, and, the word and is a preposition. You can see it both ways. Both ways grammatically in English are correct. You can do it both ways. But this one is the right one for the prophecy. The abomination of desolation, it's a statue and it's not when he goes. That's not the pinnacle of abominations. When you put a graven image, a statue in there, that's the pinnacle. Let me prove it to you. Matthew 24. This is critical to understanding the end time timeline. And understanding the end time timeline is super critical in biblical prophecy. If you don't get that, you're going to be confused. Look at Matthew 24:15. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, right? Standing in the holy place. Standing. Well, when in 2 Thessalonians 2:4 it says he takes his seat in the temple of God. Doesn't say standing, does it? Takes his seat in the temple of God, declaring he himself is God. This says it's standing. Look at Mark chapter 13. Really, really, really important. Verse 14, so when you see the abomination of desolation, this is Jesus speaking, mentioned by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not to be. A person is not an it. A person is a person. It's a he or a she, right? An it is a statue, right? And it's 1,290 days after he enters the temple and declares he's God. It's not at the same time. It's after.
Now, what's going on during those 5 days? Is that when he's making people bow down to the statue?
Yes. 5 days are a deduction. Look at Daniel 12 again. If you've got a better understanding, I'd like to hear it. And I really mean that. I don't mean that sarcastically. But I think this is how it works. The 5 days is my opinion, is what I'm trying to tell you. But he's saying from the time that the continual burnt offering is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up, standing where it ought not to be, there should be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who comes to the 1,335 days. So from there to there, you have 45 days, right? Well, the statue has to stand some amount of time, and it makes no sense that 45 days isn't a biblical number, but 40 is. If you go that way, if you move everything that direction, you got 6, 7, so you got 46, 47, 48, 49. That makes no sense.
How about 7 days and 40?
No, okay. If you go 7, right, you got 40, so you got 41, 42. It makes no sense. But 5, and if you go this way, you got 39, 38, 37. Makes no sense. The statue has to stand for some amount of time, right? Like I explained, the 7 and 40. That ratio is throughout the Bible, especially in times of judgment. And super critical that you get that understanding. You go to endtimetimeline.com and listen to the first teaching, the Abomination of Desolation. We break it down in about an hour and 15 minutes. Pretty well, I think.
Doesn't the statue kill people? Isn't it important that the statue come to life a little?
Well, yeah. Look at Revelation 13 to nail that down.
There has to have a period of time for that to happen.
Yeah. In the time of Daniel, when in chapter 3, Daniel 3, when he calls in all the music played and they bowed down, and he said, and he sets up the statue, and he says, when the music stops, everybody's supposed to bow down and worship the statue. Well, 9 times in the first 18 verses, he says, set up. And this is what he's saying, from the time the continual burnt offering is taken away and the abomination of desolation is set up. The one in Daniel is a type and shadow of this one. Revelation 13, let's start at verse 11. Okay, this is the Antichrist, and then verse 11 is the false prophet. I saw another beast rising up out of the land. He had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. Right? False prophet. He exerts all the power of right of the former beast, the Antichrist, in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to exalt and deify the Antichrist, whose deadly wound was healed, and to worship him. So he goes into the temple, declares he's God, and some Jew says, hey, the word says in Deuteronomy 13, you shall kill him. So he has a deadly head wound, but he doesn't die. Right? He performs great signs, even making fire fall from the sky to the earth in men's sights. And because of the signs which he's allowed to perform in the presence of the Antichrist, he deceives those who inhabit the earth, commanding them to erect a statue in the likeness of the beast, who was wounded by the small sword and still lived. And he's permitted to impart the breath of life into the beast's image, so that the statue of the beast could actually talk, and cause to be put to death those who will not bow down and worship the image of the beast. Same thing in Daniel 3, in the time of Daniel. The 3 Hebrew children, right, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, wouldn't bow, so they were thrown into the fiery furnace. Right? Well, They're not going to bow. They're not going to, where are they? Daniel, right? They're not going to bow, right? And God's going to save them, right? It's there, not there. It's a statue, not the Antichrist. Very important. And if you watch that video, it'll be crystal clear to you, I think.